Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining me for tonight's regional coach call for our Virginia Tech Regional that's taking place in just about 10 days. We'll hopefully cover what you need tonight to get your teams ready for competition. Our agenda tonight, kind of twofold. For those of you that have competed with us in the past, this will look pretty familiar. We're going to talk about the preparation before tournament day, things you need to do in the coming days, and then walking through what tournament day itself looks like, especially for our new coaches or new competitors, so they understand what the flow of a tournament will look like, how the day will go, and then what the next steps are going from regional to the state level if your team qualifies. So, a lot of what I'm going to summarize tonight is either linked on the coach checklist or like directly referenced on the coach checklist. So, hopefully, you find that to be a useful tool as you're getting ready for your tournament day. Students also are welcome to help you with this, right? If you have officers, they can look at some of the other reminders, some of the other like components on there and help you check those off as well if they have a high school student leadership portal account. So everything that I talk about tonight will in some fashion relate to this, but of course we're going to go a little bit deeper than that. So, first big thing is making sure that students have their VASO permission form finished. This is on the VASO website. Your school may have additional permission forms, but we have one for competition in Science Olympiad. On our website, they fill it out, they select their school. And then as soon as they fill that out, it populates their name and grade into your students in the coach portal for you to add to a roster. So that's how you can check to see if your students have successfully completed their form. If they've done it, they show up, and if they haven't, then you can't put them on a roster yet. So they cannot compete until they have that form completed. So please be checking in with your students, sending out emails or to their parents to get it done. Rosters are due Friday at 5 p.m. So you do have a couple days. And it's a super quick form. It's just asking for name, contact information for parents. There's some permissions they sign off on. We collect like their grade level, how many years they've competed in Science Olympiad, etc. Um, but they don't have to print anything off. It's all done digitally. So hopefully that can be a quick completion so you can put them on your rosters. In the portal, when you go to create your teams, you can then see that list under assign students to teams at toward the bottom of the page. So any student in that list has completed that form, and then they'll have a blank box beside their name under the edit regional team column. If you click in the blank box, you can then select which team to put them on. So they're not automatically put on a team. Even if you only have one team, you do have to go in and select which team to include them on for competition day. It does keep track of how many students you have on your roster, so you are only allowed to have up to 15 students per team, and then the seniors as well, max of 7 seniors. So if you have multiple teams, obviously both of them will show up in the drop-down menu, and you'll see those counts for each of them in their respective rows. So, in addition to that, we also need to know if you are coming to the tournament and representing as a coach. So, the coach portal will prompt you to also indicate whether you are coming to regionals or not. So, in that same page under create your teams, it'll have your name and contact information, and then it will also have a column that says coming to the regional. And the default answer is no. If you click on the no, you can change it to a yes. And so this lets us know, of course, that you're coming. It also means that we will prepare a coach wristband for you. And there needs to be someone from your team who is acting as a coach on tournament day. Um, it will also list your assistant coaches if you have them, but only if they've created a portal account. So if they don't show up, you can't add them on for them. They need to create an account just like you did for me to approve, and be linked to your school. And then they'll be able to actually like make that selection that yes, they are coming to the regional and they are one of the coaches of the team. And the reason why this is also so important is because this is going to be your access point for appeals if you have any to submit during competition day. But we will talk about what appeals mean later on. So, definitely, these are the key items to get done before Friday. Student permissions and put them on rosters. There's no like submit button for the rosters. It's just whatever's in there. Friday at 5 p.m. is what we consider done. And then we start printing off our stickers for our wristbands. If you do have any late additions, students who didn't fill in the form on time, there is a way in which we'll be able to get them added to your team and get you wristbands for them on tournament day in Vaso headquarters. It just means that you might have to take a little bit more time at check-in to do that process and connect with one of our Vaso board members who will be in the score room to do that for you. So ideally, getting them done Friday means that we'll have them all prepped and ready to go, but if any latecomers happen, that's okay. Another thing that you can be doing now is the build event sign up. So it is open for our boom, hovercraft, electric vehicle, and machines device testing. So please make sure that you're signing up your teams for that opportunity. Sign up closes the day before the tournament in the morning so that we have time to print um, our signups, get those to the event supervisors, and get everything prepared. Please make sure when you're making these signups that you're paying attention to student conflicts for like written test events, just making sure that you're not double booking a student and saying like they're going to test their hovercraft, but it's also the same time they're taking rocks and minerals. Obviously, that's not going to work well. So, helpful to have like the schedule and what your students are doing in their events on hand for when you fill in those build event signups. So to do this, you're gonna go into the coach portal. There's a button that says schedule device testing. You click on that button and then it will bring up your teams. So I can show you what that looks like. Um, so schedule device testing. And then for every team that you have, there's a button that says select for selecting their times. You can pick each individual team and then populate it with their device testing blocks. So this view has more options on it than what our regional will have because this is set up for state, but just as like our test school. But like I can select boom and hovercraft and machines and my vehicle event, submit, and then my selections will actually show up to confirm at the bottom of that page. Okay. Um, if a session number doesn't show up as an option, that means that either it's full or it's just not being offered. So, like, for example, no team can sign up for first session machines because that's when they're doing their written test. So, all of the device testing for machines is happening in sessions 2 through 6. So, if it's not an option, that's not an oversight. That's just it's not one you can choose. Um, but we have 11 teams at this competition, so my expectation is that people should be able to get the sessions that they want slash need for their team signups. Okay. Other things that I would really recommend doing to prepare for tournament day would, of course, be communicating with your team members and their families and community, including like event schedule, making sure that they know where to access that, or you can send it to them directly. The schedule includes the times of the events. So, in particular, they can know like when they have to impound, depending on how you're choosing to run your team, you may expect everyone from the team to show up at the same time and be there the duration of the day. Or maybe if you're traveling more locally, you are able to let them kind of come and go, and then they just need to be mindful of the times that their events are happening. That's up to you as a coach. Vaso doesn't have a particular requirement with that. Just make sure you're being clear to your team members about what you're expecting. Also, would be helpful to remind them to make sure they have all their necessary materials for their events. They've got their chemistry kits packed. They have the appropriate personal protective equipment, right? Their goggles and aprons. They have their cheat sheets printed, since that won't be something they can do very easily on campus. And even things like, okay, who's bringing the electric vehicle? Who's bringing the hovercraft? Um, and this isn't necessarily stuff that should live with you. You can just prompt them to review the rules, review the clarifications, and make sure that they're checking off for their own lists the things that they need to pack to be ready for their events. That's one of the benefits of Division C, right? Is that in theory we can entrust our students with those tasks, and it's on them to get that done. Also, if your team is traveling, I would really make sure that your families know how to contact you at any given time, whether that's giving them your cell phone number, setting up a Google phone number, something like that, so they can be in ready contact. And with that, those are like the main things that are before tournament day. So, are there any questions about the logistics just to plan before um, coming to campus next Saturday?
Yeah, quick question.
Sure.
We don't need to sign up for like specific events and all that beforehand. We just kind of need to make sure we're registered as like a team. I get everybody on there and all that. And then maybe the day of, how exactly will it work for them, like signing in and checking into their particular events?
So they do need to sign up for their build events. Just the device testing, so boom
Yeah,
lever, hovercraft, electric vehicle, and then machines. Um,
right. So for those
but
four.
for the other events, it's set by team number. But actually, everyone, since we have 11 teams, everyone's doing them in the same session. So it will be clear from the schedule about like, okay, I go to forensics at this time.
Mhm.
And then I'll talk about how we like check them in, but there's like no way that they need to in advance, even on tournament day, let us know I will be doing this event, I won't be doing this event. These are the students who are doing this event, etc. They just show up.
Awesome. Just wanted to verify. Thank you.
Sure, yeah. Other prep questions before we get into how tournament day itself works.
I do have a quick one.
Sure.
So, if we have students that are, you said that we could add students to our team
Mhm,
on tournament day.
mhm.
Should we have them bring in like a printed copy of that online permission form or something, or can
Nope.
we just check them in day of?
You'll be able to check them in day of.
Okay.
We are able to see it on our end in the system when they've filled in their permission form, and then we can add them to a team roster, and then we'll just write their wristband by hand.
Okay, but they should come with the online questionnaire already done and in
Yes.
by a parent. Okay, thank you.
Yes. All right, other things before we talk about day of. Okay, so here is our tournament day schedule. I did add rooms in here the other day, though they may still change a little bit, just as we kind of figure out the flow of our day and who's doing what. But for the most part, events are going to be in the new classroom building, in Holden, and then some events in the undergraduate science laboratory building. And we will have maps. There's also a map that's already linked that I will share with you. But as you can see, our day starts at 9 o'clock in the morning. And then we should be done by 6 o'clock in the evening, after awards. And so it is a full day. Um, and you can see that each session has a designated 55-minute period. And then this schedule tells you what events happen during those times. So session one is the machines written test. Session two is designer genes and material science and rocks and minerals, etc. We do have a built-in lunch break. Um, and then I will go through and talk about what impound means, and other key things they have to know for when they arrive at their events. But this schedule is linked on the coach portal and in the coach checklist as a Google Sheet. So it'll obviously real-time update with any changes that we need to make. So, 9 o'clock, coaches are expected to arrive at the beginning of the day and check in with us. A check-in, I believe, is going to be in the new classroom building. That's usually where our headquarters is, but I will, of course, confirm the room number with you all before tournament day, as well as provide you contact information for like how to get in touch with us. Because you guys will be in home bases that are in a different building. Obviously, we're using rooms in various buildings. So we get that it may not always be feasible for every question to walk over to new classroom building to come ask us. So we will give you a contact number. Um, Only coaches are expected to check in. Individual students and parents do not check in. They just check in with you. The coach is checking in for the whole team with Vaso. And what check-in means is that we're going to ask you to verify your roster that we printed off. We'll ask you to verify the count of your students, and we'll give you our pre-printed wristbands for your students. And so one of those first key items of the day after check-in is you're going to need to take those wristbands and make sure that your students put them on and keep them on all day. Um, we'll also have, like I said, maps. We'll have a copy of the schedule for you, um, all in a coach packet ready to go. I do want to remind everybody that one of the components of the team expectations policy was that there will be a school approved adult on site for the duration of the tournament, and we assume that that is the head coach unless we are told otherwise. So if you haven't already, please make plans to be on the Virginia Tech campus with your team from 9 to 6. And make sure that you are going to be reachable by phone and or email during the duration of the tournament. If for whatever reason you cannot be there the entire time, please make arrangements to have another school approved adult take your place. Make sure they're authorized by your principal to represent your school, and then you just notify me of that change. So hopefully you'll spend the whole day with us, but I understand that sometimes that is not possible to do, but just make sure that there is an adult for your team that we know of and can connect with in the case of any situation we have to notify of. So those wristbands that you're going to get in your packets, you guys get them too. Coaches get wristbands. It'll have your name, it'll have your school, and it'll have all the team numbers that you represent. So you will also want to wear that wristband. They're purple again this year. And that is also just like a really good visual indicator for our event supervisors and tournament staff of who you are. Not everybody has met all of you face to face. And so, it's helpful for them to be able to just quickly see, oh, they have a purple wristband, they're a coach, they can ask what school. The students will also, of course, get wristbands. It will have their first and last name, their team, their school name, and their team name, and their team number. If you have more than one team for your school, each of your teams will have a different color wristband. This serves a really crucial purpose for us of one, making sure that by everyone wearing a wristband, we're accounting for every team's roster size. So making sure there's no more than 15 students representing a given team. And then two, it's a good visual indicator that of like who's allowed to work together. So let's say that Ryan and Lauren show up to Rocks and Minerals and they're like, we're partners, we're doing this event together, but they're wearing two different color wristbands. The event supervisor is going to pick up on that and say, wait a second, looks like you guys are on two different teams, even if they're from the same school. So you guys are not actually working together. They can only work on an event with a member from their own team. So same color wristband, same team number. It is also nice that because they have a wristband, when students forget their team number, it's written right there. So when they have to put it on their papers, they have that as an easy reference. We do actually have a pretty thorough wristband policy that details some of those reasons and like the fairness behind making sure we keep to that 15 count. Um, please make sure that your students are putting them on securely at the beginning of the day, but not like so tight that they're cutting off their circulation. We want to make sure that they last the whole day, that they don't slip off. If something happens where a wristband is damaged or defective, then you can bring that wristband to headquarters and we'll replace it for you. Um, if a wristband is lost, it's actually a much more um, thorough process that both the student and the coach have to come to headquarters and describe what happened and why the wristband was lost, where, all of those details. But you guys have an additional layer of that I will unfortunately not be on site at Virginia Tech. I will be at another parallel regional. And so the VASO board member who will be there will actually have to call me for me to approve this. So please just make sure that your students are putting their wristbands on and keeping them on, and then we won't have to worry about that. I did mention that all your teams are going to have a home base space. Those are already in the portal for teams, so you can see what room you're in. I believe most of them are in Pamplin. Um, no matter where your team's room is or where they may be congregating on campus, please make sure that you tell students and parents to be respectful of other teams' belongings, other devices, and just their other spaces. And of course, the university space as a whole. Um, Obviously, we want to be continued, like invited back. And the best way to do that is to treat everything well. It is also helpful in that home-based space if there is an adult, or the coach or someone else in the home-based area during the tournament so that if we do have to physically come find you, we have a good idea of where you might be. But of course, we can also just give you a phone call to confirm your location. But it's also nice for the students to like know that there are people there. Um, that they can, ask questions of who are keeping track of their supplies, etc. Regarding those home-based spaces, we do have a cleanup policy that please make sure that team members and chaperones are clean up after themselves in those home-based spaces, as well as in every event. So when a student leaves an event, they should, have cleaned up, not left a mess behind for the next group. And we have a policy in which we can apply a penalty if that cleanup has not happened to our satisfaction. So, some event rules have a specific penalty for that. In general, though, if we have a team who doesn't clean up after themselves in an event, then we will apply a penalty to the team's final ranking. Um, if it's a whole space, like a home-based space, then we can actually apply that penalty to the overall tournament score. And I never want to do that. But if you're looking for an additional incentive for your students to pick up after themselves, other than just like being good citizens, this will work. They don't want their scores affected. Um, so this also extends to devices that need to be picked up from impound before the end of tournament day. So just making sure that they take all their belongings with them. Depending on the classroom space that you're in, there may or may not be like materials out, like a stapler, tissues, etc. Please don't use any of those things if they are there. Please don't use the like teacher desk, like the lectern, and don't use the projection system in the room if there is one. Um, Ideally, this is just a space to congregate, a place to sit, to study, but we don't need to use the equipment and materials that Virginia Tech has left in there. We do provide trash bags. So please make sure that students are cleaning up after themselves and putting trash in those bags, not overflowing the usually smaller classroom bins. So then that makes it easier also for us to just leave the trash outside the door at the end of the day. A general suggestion for home-based spaces is to take a picture of the room when you first arrive so that you know exactly how to leave it at the end of the day. After a long day, it may be harder to remember, but a picture really helps that along. All right, so it was 9 o'clock. You checked in, you got your wristbands, you brought them to your students who put them securely on their wrists, and now session one is beginning. And in session one, we do have our machines written test that is happening at 9:30. But the other important thing that's going on at that time, and the bulk of what students will be doing, is impound. So electric vehicle, hovercraft, and machines are all impound events. And so I'm going to talk through what that means and what our students should expect. One thing I want to note that is unique for this tournament is that we're actually asking our machines competitors to bring their device to written test for impound. So, um, they'll just bring it with them. They won't actually test their device during session one, but that will be the same room that we use for the rest of the day for machines lever testing. Okay, so impound means that teams are submitting their devices and any other required items for particular events to be held by a supervisor until their device testing block. The reason why we do this is a fairness component that there is information about events that isn't released until the event actually begins. And so if a team doesn't have to turn in their device, they may be able to watch other teams kind of and have more practice time or more calibration time, and that's not fair to the teams that go earlier in the day. So we eliminate that problem by having teams submit their devices to impound to be with the supervisor. Different items are required for impound. It just depends on the event, whether they are supposed to impound the tools that they plan to use, any design logs, things like that. So just make sure that students are reading their rules to know what they're expected to bring to impound. And then they should also bring a writing utensil so that they can fill out a component of the score sheet that I'll show you here in a second. If students don't impound devices, there is a significant penalty associated with that. So really, really important that students are paying attention to that session one impound for those three events and getting those devices submitted on time. We do have an FAQ about impound that's available on our website on the resources page. So if you are new to Science Olympiad or have students that are new to Science Olympiad, it's a really good summary of a lot of what I'm saying tonight about what we mean by impound. So it's important to know that when they submit their device, we're not like already immediately judging it. It's literally just a holding space. The judging will happen during their session, so measurements and things like that. But all of that is written up there if students find that useful as a reference. Then for also to clarify for impound, it just needs to be impounded by a member of the team. It does not have to be the exact students that are competing in that event, especially like let's say that your machines team, one of the students is also doing hovercraft. Well, they're going to be taking the machines written test during impound, so they can't be in two places at once. So another team member can impound their device, but we do not allow coaches or parents or any other adults to impound. It must be members of the team. So once impound is done and our sessions actually begin for our device testing, as I pointed out before in the schedule, you sign up for an entire block, but just know that your team won't use the whole block for their device testing. There's not going to be a set order for teams in that block, but no team is going to take really more than 15 minutes. So if your students are worried about time to their next event, they may be able to ask to go first. Really up to you and the students and the event supervisor, but just know that like it's not going to take all 50 minutes to test your team's hovercraft. Um, they do not need wristbands to impound devices at this tournament, just to address what was in the chat. Um, okay, yeah. So they're only going to take about 15 minutes to test their device. That's going to include a number of different things. So first, the event supervisor is going to ask them about their device, how they built it, how who designed it, etc. They're going to take measurements of the device, and then of course they're going to complete the actual task. So, whatever that task may be, as expressed in the rules. It's important that students are bringing appropriate safety equipment with them when they test their device, though, because obviously we're not going to let them test it if it says they're supposed to have goggles and they don't bring goggles. This is obviously to protect them, right? Boom Lever is a dangerous event if you're not wearing goggles. So they have to have them. And then, of course, any device or materials that they didn't impound needs to also be brought with them. You are welcome to view, like to publicly watch these events for Boom, Electric Vehicle, and Hovercraft. Scrambler is a B event. It's not at this tournament. But those are the only ones that are available for viewing during this regional. So everything else is closed door. So would really encourage you to go see the build events if you are able to. That is one of the more fun parts of the tournament day. But so when I say making sure they bring goggles, there are actually some parameters around what goggles they are expected to bring. And they are listed in the rule book. There are different categories of goggles. A lot of the build events usually require category B goggles, but there are some events that require category C. Category B goggles are impact rated goggles. So they have a rate marking on them that says Z87 plus. And our event supervisors are trained to look for that marking to make sure that they are the appropriate type of goggle before they compete. To kind of help with that, we do provide like a one pager to the event supervisors that they can look at if they need to during the actual event to make sure that they have the right type of goggles. So as part of the discussion, when our students present their devices, they're going to be asked about who built it and who designed it. And in order for their device to be legal, so to speak, it must be only constructed by members of their 15-person team. So they'll be asked about it to make sure that that's the case. Mentors, whether that's a parent, a coach, a teacher, anybody else, are absolutely prohibited from constructing any part of the device. So it must be 100% student built and it must be only students on their team. So if you have multiple teams, what this means is that while they can talk about general ideas together, they cannot help each other build their devices. So Team A must build their own electric vehicle and cannot lay a single hand on the building of Team B's electric vehicle. Okay, so they have to keep those separate. It must be built by members on that particular competition team. Also, then, if you have a student who, let's say, next week tells you they can no longer make it to the tournament, but they helped build your hovercraft, you either have to have your team build a new hovercraft if you remove them from the roster, or you must keep them on the roster so that you can still use that hovercraft. So the name of all the builders has to be on the tournament day roster. So you have to think about that carefully if you were intending to like swap a student or like use an alternate, that you want to make sure they weren't one of the builders in the event. Okay. So for build events, usually like only two of the students from the team are presenting and testing the device. It is important that the two people presenting it were primary builders so that they know how it was constructed and how it works. If through questioning we feel that they know less about how it works than they should, then we may ask to talk to other students. On the team just to kind of get a sense of how it was built and everything. Um, Also, just so that your students know, they're welcome to use power tools to construct their device, but actually at the tournament, there is no power tool usage allowed. So during an impound and during competitions, teams are not allowed to use power tools. So if they have to make adjustments, they need to be ready to do it with manual tools. Rather than what they might have used, like drills or whatever, to construct it. They also should be familiar with the tools that they're bringing. So if they bring a tool and they don't know how to use it safely, we'll tell them they can't use that tool. So, yeah, very important that the students presenting the device are the ones who built it. So they also are the ones that were familiar with the tools and with the calibration and can do everything safely and, you know, t to the best for your team. But like I said, if there are other students that we need to ask about the device, we will. If through those questions we find that the students can't really answer them, the event supervisor may have to conclude that the students didn't construct the device themselves, and that can lead to penalties or to disqualification. And so we don't want that to happen. So please just make it clear what those parameters are around building devices with your students. Because also, let's be real, high schoolers, they're still building them up to the day of before the tournament. So if this were my team, there would still be like a strong chance that a hovercraft did not exist yet. So there's still time to catch them, and remind them of this before they start construction, maybe. Or maybe your team is more on top of things than my teams were. I don't know. All right, this honestly shouldn't be that much of a big deal in Division C, because chances are they don't travel with as many parents. But I think it's worth the reminder that parents absolutely cannot construct anything on a device. They also cannot test the device, assemble it, or calibrate it, at any time. So our students should be the ones in charge of the devices, in charge of their calibration, in charge of their transport, and in actually operating the device. Parents are also not permitted to enter the competition area at tournaments. They're not allowed to interfere with an event or offer coaching or advice from the sidelines. This actually goes for coaches too. You can watch, but you can't say anything. Um, and then a big one, they're not allowed to take any pictures of another team's device or touch it. If you wish to take video or pictures of your own team's device, that's totally okay. But don't be surprised if an event supervisor just asks to confirm that it is your team to make sure that we're respecting that boundary. And then also, parents should not be contacting the score room or the state director directly. They go through you. So that's one of the main roles that coaches serve on tournament day is being like the the bringer of information, the bringer of questions, to act as that like intermediary between the team, the parents, and the coach. So, how we ask our students to verify that it was only built by the 15-person team is at the very top of the checklist for each of the builds. There's a box for them to fill in their names, their school, their team name and number, and then they sign asserting that it was only built by members of the 15 student team. There's also a couple other questions that are asked, like, was it built with a kit? Kits are allowed, but they must be substantially modified. So answering this question just prompts our event supervisor to ask about those modifications. They're allowed to use a 3D printer or a laser cutter or a CNC mill. So again, answering yes isn't a problem. It just tells our event supervisors what types of follow-up questions they may want to ask. And then also a reminder that in addition to the rule book, Vaso does publish clarifications that they should be aware of, in advance. So, like, one of those is that machines is actually an impound event, and we separate the device testing from the written test. So, that was something published on the Vaso website. We have a whole list of them. So, if you're on the Vaso website, go to middle and high school and go to clarifications, or you can go by event. You can see, like, these are all of the published adjustments, amendments, etc., that we have made. So if I select, say, electric vehicle, ooh, excuse me, you can see that we have issued 5 clarifications regarding an electric vehicle. And so these are just as valid as rules, and teams should be aware of them, before competition. So they're also going to show up on that checklist. And the checklists are available as well. So your teams can actually use them, and I encourage them to do so. Um, so if I go to the event page for electric vehicle, you can see those clarifications also listed here. You'll also see that it has some like general summary information at the top, very similar to the rule book. But under resources, we have this Vaso event checklist and score sheet. And this is this links to all the checklists that we use. So for electric vehicle, here's that box I was just talking about that they fill out, the students do. And then the rest of the sheet is what the event supervisor fills out as they're like measuring the device and then having the students run the device. So if they want to make sure that their device is compliant with all the rules, they can use the exact sheet that our event supervisors use as they're preparing. So that might be something that you consider encouraging your teams to do in this final week before their tournament. They can print them off. They could do some like mock runs, make measurements, read through the language. I feel like this is more digestible sometimes than the rule book. So, a definitely more accessible format for them. And it does also reflect all the VASO clarifications that we expect them to follow. Okay. So, just a reminder that if your team has already competed in invitationals this season, that does not mean that their device will be judged in the same way. So invitationals are separate from regionals. Um, just because it was approved at an invitational doesn't mean that it didn't actually break a rule or a construction parameter. And so our judging is definitely more strict at regionals. Our judges are highly trained. So the best way that they can ensure that their device is compliant and matches all the rules is to do those checks for themselves using those checklists that I showed you. So once the testing of the device is finished, once the event supervisor has completed that checklist, and they're all finished testing, the students are welcome to take their device with them. They can take it back to their home base. They can take it to their car. They could take it anywhere. They're allowed to do with it what they would like, unless they intend to file an appeal. And in that case, they should leave the device with the supervisors. So, appeals are instances can be initiated by you as coaches or by event supervisors if there's the thought by one of the parties that a ruling may not have like matched with the national rule book or with the VASO clarifications. So there's like a question or an uncertainty about a particular ruling. You can initiate an appeal, or a supervisor can even initiate appeal for us to take another careful look at the decision. So parents and competitors do not initiate appeals. If you have officers, they do not have access in the portal to submit an appeal. You, as the head coach, have to do it. So, speaking of the portal, there is a button that says Tournament Day Appeals, and those will be available and accessible on Tournament Day. Um, you click on that button, and it will ask you to confirm your contact info in the portal, like your email and your phone, because you're actually going to get an email from the coach portal when there's updates to your appeal. So, you'll be able to get those like status updates. But then it will take you to a page where it's going to ask you to input some information. It's going to ask you, what was the decision and what rule do you think it broke? So you will have to reread your event rules and clarifications. So I would encourage you to locally download them to your computer or just make sure you have access to them, so that you can revisit them in the case of an appeal on tournament day. So we ask you what rule was broken, and we ask like how we need to fix it. What is the solution? So you have to propose a solution. An appeal cannot just be, we didn't like the rule, we didn't know about the rule, we think the rule was too hard. It needs to be, the rule as written was not followed. Here's how we know that, and here's what we suggest to do to change it. You also must submit this form no later than 1 hour after that particular event has concluded. So it is timely. So just make sure that your competitors are aware of that. You may be there to see a build event and then have an immediate dialogue after the event with your student to say like, oh, we want to appeal something. But if that's not the case, then they need to know that in the instance of something going wrong or against a rule that is published, they need to come immediately find you to be able to file the appeal. They can't like go get lunch and then kind of lollygag to come back. Like time is of the essence with that for sure. We also do have a published appeals FAQ. You can access it from the resources page of our website. Again, it kind of goes over a lot of the same things about what an appeal is, and how it's handled. So, usually when an appeal is filed, a member of the VASO team reads it. They may go talk to the event supervisor. They may pull the rule book or pull the written test or something like that. They may want to talk to the students, maybe not. Just kind of depends on the nature of the appeal. And then before the end of the tournament day, they will notify you of the decision, whether the ruling stands, the ruling's overturned, and what other further action needs to be taken. We don't honestly deal with or expect a lot of appeals, but obviously it's important to us to have a way to handle them if they arise. So if something has gone wrong, please use the system. But fingers crossed, things go well and consistent, and so we won't have to worry about this too much. All right. Are there any questions about device testing and just like the ins and outs of that generally before I talk about the rest of the schedule? All right, let's move on. So, the rest of the tournament day, other than those build events, is like I said before, determined uh like by team number. So all the teams are competing in the same events at the same time. So you can see that very clearly outlined here. So wherever it says team one, like 1 through 11, those are the team numbers. So you can see when astronomy is happening, when Codebusters is happening, etc. We do not make any changes to this. So it will run only exactly as published. Um, and just know that in contrast to the build events, most of the written test events utilize the full session block of time. And so participants are expected to be there at the start of the session in order to receive their instructions. If they show up late, that's not the end of the world. They are allowed to come in and compete. They just won't get to make up that lost time, and they may have to then have those instructions like reread to them before they can actually begin. So it's super helpful if they are there right at the beginning. You'll note in the schedule, we do have 15 minutes in between sessions because we recognize that students are traveling distances between buildings. So this should be enough time for them to get where they need to go. It's at this point that I always feel a little bit like a broken record where I keep saying, read the rules, read the rules, read the rules. But that that's the number one thing for our teams. Make sure they're reading their rules, and that they're bringing only their allowed materials. And this changes by event. So some events, they're allowed a binder with whatever information they can fit in it. And in other events, they're only allowed to share a single piece of paper with their partner. Um, it changes based like what calculators they can bring. So those details are important and they're all published in the National Rule Book. Also, you'd think it'd be implied, but I do need to say it. They need to bring something to write with to their written events. They should have writing utensils. And then, we have a lot of resources on our website, a lot of videos of me talking about things. But they shouldn't only rely on things that are in these videos, or that they read like on the SciOlly page or whatever. Like they should be reading the rule book themselves. They should be looking at the checklists. They should be looking at the clarifications for themselves to make sure they're as prepared and knowledgeable as possible. It should not fall to you. You, as the coach, are just guiding them and reminding them of the resources, but they should be the ones, really accessing the resources and making sure that they have what they need. I mentioned calculators. So in the rule book, page C73, there is a handy little guide of what the types of calculators are. So on a rules page for an event, it says what class of calculator is permitted. Um, and so this, I think, helps give like a visual to that. So if it says class one, what does that mean? Well, it's like a 4 or 5 function calculator. In contrast, class three is like the graphing calculators that a lot of our students have in school. If an event allows a class two calculator, they can bring a class one, though they may be at a disadvantage so that it might not have all the functions that they're expected to do. But they absolutely cannot bring a class three. So they can go down, but they can't go up. And so if they bring is their graphing calculator to the tournament, there are some events that they won't be able to use a calculator at all because that's not permitted. And in no event are they allowed to use their phone or smartwatch as a calculator. That is not allowed. And they're not allowed to use their laptop except for astronomy. That's the only event that permits a laptop. For chemistry events, there are also some additional things that our students need to prepare and bring. So this is forensics and material science at this tournament. Students are going to complete a paper-based test, but there's also a hands-on lab portion so at the same time. So that's why they need some additional stuff. They've got to bring their safety equipment. We'll talk about what that includes. If they don't have it, we're not letting them into the testing room. They must have their personal protective equipment. And then students should also, in theory, um, bring their box of chemistry equipment. And there's a list in the rule book that outlines what's permitted, and I'll show you that as well. They'll be allowed in the room if they don't have it. They're just going to be at a disadvantage without it and might not be able to perform all of the lab tasks. So this is the chemistry lab equipment list. It looks a little bit different than in years past. I think it's better this way. This is on page C72. So everything on this list, they are permitted to bring to forensics, material science, or in other tournaments, chemistry lab. They don't have to bring all of it. They're allowed to, but usually like if they've been practicing, they kind of know the things that they want to use. For example, maybe a student really hates using spot plates and they prefer to just use small test tubes. Like they can do that. They don't have to bring both. Maybe they prefer always using Erlenmeyer flasks instead of beakers. I don't know. These are just some examples, or they know what sizes they like to use. They don't have to have every single size. And they just carry it all in a box. They should definitely include in the box paper towels. That's one of the things that's allowed. Um, and that's also because like they have to clean up their station. And I also used to use the paper towels to sort of pad some of the glassware for in transit. So this is one of the things that it may require your attention and assistance to procure the items for help procure them for them. But it just kind of depends on how your school works. I'm a chemistry teacher, so I was always putting together the kits for them because I was using stuff from my classroom. But maybe your school has worked out something different. Regarding their safety equipment, though, so these are the non-negotiables. They must wear goggles. The goggles for chemistry events are indirect vent chemical splash protection goggles. These are goggles that fit to the face, so they'll get those super sweet goggle lines. And they cannot have just open holes in them like the ones on the right. The ones on the left have those indirect vent like knobs on them. They don't have to be black like this. I just picked this picture because it's easier to see them, but they should have those angled vents um, on them rather than the open holes. So make sure they have the right type of goggles. These are category C goggles according to the rule book. You may find that if your school has these type of chemical splash goggles, they might also be Z87 plus rated. I know mine are at my school, so I actually could use the same goggles for all the events. They covered my builds as well as the chemistry events. But remember, builds have to have that Z87 plus rating. So if your chemistry goggles don't have that, they can still be used for chemistry. They just can't be used for those builds like Boom. They also must wear a lab apron or coat. Um, It must go cover the torso and extend to at least mid-thigh in order to provide the appropriate protection. Obviously, in this picture, it goes a little bit longer than that, but as they are dressed in this picture, these students would not be permitted into the lab because, in addition to goggles and a lab coat or apron, they must wear long sleeves down to their wrists, and they are not doing that here. They do meet the criteria of wearing long pants and closed-toed shoes, but they must also wear long sleeves. Additionally, pants must be loose-fitting. They cannot be leggings. So please make sure that your students are aware of that. It is actually a safety issue. If something is spilled on leggings, they're in immediate contact with the skin. Those chemicals will transfer to skin much faster than if they were on like loose jeans. If they have long, like shoulder length hair, they also need to bring a hair tie to pull it back. In forensics, they use Bunsen burners and candles, and so we want to remove that hazard. All right, I know that's a lot of information, but the good thing, again, about being a high school coach is that your students can absolutely help you process this information. And so much of it is wrapped up in those like links on the resources page that they can also navigate for themselves. And I will also share this recording as well as all the slides so you can go back and look at any key points that you need to. But the summary of your role as a coach is before the tournament, you're finishing rosters and signing up for build events. At the tournament, the beginning of the day, you check in, you get those wristbands and get them on your students. And then during the tournament, yeah, you're going to be available to your team for questions. Maybe you have to file an appeal on their behalf, but I hope that you get to watch your team compete in your build events. That is the most fun part of the day. And then after the tournament, of course, you're going to help facilitate team cleanup of their spaces. And then we have the award ceremony, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But through all of this, you are the team connection to Vaso. Like I mentioned before, we will share contact info with you so that you have a way to reach us on tournament day if the need arises. Um, and also we will tell you like once we have it finalized the score room location in case you need to come see us in person. But we are here to help to make sure that your team has as smooth of a day as they possibly can. And then we will celebrate in our award ceremony. So award ceremony is happening at 5 p.m. In Squire Student Center in the Colonial Hall there. So it is pretty soon after the end of the day. Session 6 ends at 4:30. Um, but with only 11 teams, scoring usually goes pretty quickly, and we're able to get awards going and get them done before 6. So, just to make sure everyone understands what will be announced at the awards, we do have 11 teams competing. There are 6 schools. We will announce the top 4 places in each event. We will award 4 medals in each event. And then there are 2 trophies, so top 2 schools. And those 2 trophy winning programs will be invited to the state tournament. So schools qualify for the state tournament as a whole. If your school has multiple teams, it's your top placing team that determines state qualification. You also are not like tied in to sending those exact same students to state if your school qualifies. There, it's because it's not like individual qualification. The only exception to that is gold bids, and I will talk about that in a second. But overall, state competition is qualification by school. For gold bids, this is something we've done the past couple years, and it's been really, really fun. It is great for our smaller teams, for our newer teams, gives you something to really strive for. And maybe you're not covering every event, but the ones you're covering, there's the opportunity to still earn a gold bid to state. So let's say that your school does not qualify as a whole for the state tournament, but you have a group of students that earned first place in an event. We invite just those specific students to come compete in that event at the state tournament. So that's what our gold bid means. Here's an example. This is from the 2024 Vaso season. So Rock Ridge High School that particular year did not qualify for the state tournament. They qualified the next year, but not in 2024. However, at their regional, they took first place in astronomy. And so I invited those two students of that team who took the astronomy test to come to state and compete in astronomy. They compete as an exhibition team. They're also allowed to compete in the trial events. And they ended up earning second place at state. And so it didn't impact the scoring of the other teams vying for a spot at nationals. But as you can see, they were announced in the award ceremony. They got to take home a second place medal. And even though there's no pathway for them to then compete at the national level, since they're not a full team, it still, is a morale booster. It gives them something to strive for and recognizes their huge efforts in their event preparations. And then the next year they qualified as a whole team for state, which was excellent. So just know that at the end of the award ceremony, we will announce and make sure everyone understands those gold bids. And then I invite those particular students via email the following day um, to compete. So we'll have two full teams from this regional, and then we'll see what gold bids are coming as well. In the end, we will post the full results on Duosmium so that everyone can see the full placings for every event, 1 through 11. Um, and I'll share that link also in an email, usually the next day, to coaches so they can see those results. All right. One final thing. The Virginia Tech student group that helps run this tournament for us has done an excellent job of putting together parking and dining information for you all. So I have linked that on the coach checklist. So you can check that out there, see what those options may be, both for where you want to park on tournament day and where your students may want to eat or get food on tournament day. If you have any questions about any of that, I'm happy to seek additional answers from the SOVT group, but hopefully they've got it covered. All right. What questions do we have? I know that's a lot of information, but ask away if you've got anything on your mind. All right. For those of you joining live, I'll stick around for a little bit, answer any questions after the recording. But otherwise, I hope your team has smooth preparations in advance of this regional and has an excellent time at the VT regional. Please do not hesitate to email me if you have any questions leading up to the tournament. And yeah, best of luck to you all.